Have you ever stepped into a place that feels like it's been waiting for you? The air doesn't move. The walls remember footsteps that aren't yours. In these forgotten places, the past isn't gone, it's rehearsing, waiting for the next explorer, brave enough to walk in and leave a piece of themselves behind. So grab your light and keep your camera rolling. Welcome to Tales Atelier, where the abandoned is never truly empty.
It was Jake's idea. Of course, it's always Jake's idea. That's the curse of being twins-eye. Can tell when he's already decided something, even before he says it. His grin stretches a certain way, like he's been waiting for me to protest so he can drag me in anyway. The old hospital crouched at the end of the block like something the city had shoved into a corner and abandoned. Bricks crumbled, windows were boarded, vines knotted themselves into the mortar. People said the place was full of asbestos and ghosts. Jake heard both and lit up like someone had dared us personally. He borrowed a crowbar from Dad's garage, texted me a pin, no explanation, just, come on. I went, because that's what I do. Up close, the hospital exhaled a wet chill that clung to my skin. The doors had been painted shut sometime last century, the surface cracked like alligator hide. Jake wedged the crowbar into the seam, metal teeth squealing, muscles straining. On 3, he said. He loves counting down, like we're kids again, timing ourselves on bike races or dares that left us scraped and breathless. We leaned, wood splintered with a sound that rattled in my jaw, and the door lurched inward, coughing dust. Inside smelled like wet cardboard and pennies left too long in a pocket. Our flashlights swept over peeling paint, countenance of mold, graffiti scrawled in layers. Get Out showed up 3 times, written by 3 different hands. The place swallowed sound. Even our sneakers seemed to hush themselves on linoleum gone soft. Corridors branched like veins, doubling back without warning. Filing cabinets had vomited manila folders across the floor. Broken gurneys hunched in corners like they were waiting to be wheeled somewhere. See, Jake said, nudging a drawer with his shoe. Nothing but history. History sagged from the ceiling tiles. History smelled like a drowned basement. After 30 minutes of dead ends, I couldn't take it anymore. We've seen enough, I told him. Jake pretended not to hear. He always does. Another twin trick, knowing how to tune me out when he wants. He was already drifting down a narrower passage, where the air pressed colder against my lungs, like we'd slipped into the throat of the building. At the end of that corridor waited a door that didn't match the rest. No graffiti, no busted glass. Just a heavy wooden panel, a little too clean, like someone had cared for it. The lock looked rusted, but the rust was too neat to paint it on. My stomach tightened with the kind of certainty only twins know. The one where one of us feels trouble coming, and the other is already reaching for it. Jake tapped the lock. Bet, there's something good inside. There's never something good inside a locked door in an abandoned hospital, I said. He grinned my grin, mirrored, but sharper, and shoved the crowbar into the hasp. The lock resisted like it had a heartbeat. His knuckles whitened. Metal screamed. Then, with a pop that echoed down the hall, the hasp snapped. The door sagged open, breathing out stale air with a copper edge. We raised our lights. Mirrors. The room was lined with them, rescues, strays, trophies. Cheval mirrors, with their feet missing. Narrow rectangles in cheap frames. Antique ovals dulled to pewter. Medicine cabinet doors, hinges still clinging, like they'd been ripped out of tiled walls. They faced one another, ricocheting our beams back at angles that didn't make sense. The concrete floor pressed cold into my shoes, into my bones. Jake whistled.
Jackpot.
The sound came back thin, delayed, not an echo, more like the room had chosen to repeat it. My skin prickled. "Don't," I whispered. Jake's grin tilted. That grin has always been the signal. The one that says, "I'm going in, and you can either follow or be left behind." So I followed, because that's what being Jake's twin has always meant. The door yawned wider behind us, as if relieved we'd finally stepped inside. We edged sideways into the room, shoulders brushing like we could make ourselves smaller targets. My flashlight beam jittered across glass, and instantly we multiplied. 2 of us, 4, 8. Faces doubled and quartered until the room felt like it had too many corners. "This is insane," Jake said, delighted. He planted himself in the center like a conductor before an orchestra of twins. Free funhouse. It wasn't a funhouse. Funhouse mirrors warp things so you can laugh at the lies. These didn't lie. They told the truth, but the truth lagged. In one mirror we moved a breath too late. In another, a breath too soon. Not wrong enough to shout about, just wrong enough to curdle my stomach. It was like hearing your own name whispered behind you, spinning, and finding no one there. I swept my beam left. It froze on a tall rectangle, showing Jake in his hoodie, grinning that dammy grin. But beside him, where I stood, was only blank concrete. My throat clenched. "Jake." He leaned over my shoulder, his breath ghosting my cheek, his frown cut quick. "That's not funny." I turned in slow circles, trying to prove the glass wrong. Another pane, wide and cracked, showed only me. No Jake. "Nope," I muttered. The word sounded thin. Jake dragged his light across the row. Some mirrors showed both of us, some only one, and some, God. Some smiled when we didn't, teeth too white, too many, too hungry. In one, Jake's reflection leaned half an inch closer than Jake himself stood. In another, my reflection's shoulders rose toward my ear like it was whispering something only the glass could hear. My shoulders stayed still. The air thickened, metallic on my tongue. The taste you get before your nose bleeds. It wasn't that the mirrors were watching. It was that something behind them was weighing us, twin against twin, deciding which one to keep. Jake's voice cracked sharp. "Okay, we're done. We're leaving." I latched onto the words, relief loosening my chest, until I glanced at the nearest mirror. The door we'd come through stood wide there, corridor waiting, open like an exit sign. I spun to confirm. The real door slammed. Not a soft swing, a boom that rattled dust from the ceiling, made my bones ache. The chain we'd broken dangled uselessly from one side, no knob on ours. Every reflection turned its head toward the sound, not after us, before us. I don't mean we moved, and they followed. I mean they moved first. Perfect choreography, twins to one another, leaving us behind. The slam rang in my ears until it warped into another sound, high-pitched, thin, sharp enough to splinter nerves. The glass was humming. Jake lunged for the door, shouldering it, like he'd break the wall down with stubbornness alone. The wood flexed and held. He jammed the crowbar in, metal shrieking. The hinges barked like an animal caught in a trap. Behind us, something rattled. Not the door. The mirrors. I spun, light shaking, and saw it in a tall pane near the far corner. A figure stood behind us. Not Jake. Not me. someone else. He was blurred at the edges, his face smeared like the glass refused to focus on him. But even through the blur, I felt his stare, heavy, patient, steady as a hand pressing down on the back of my neck. "Do you see that?" I whispered, though I already knew Jake did. His beam wavered, his breath hitching. "Yeah." We spun, light slicing through empty air. Nothing there, just cracked concrete, peeling shadows that stayed where they belonged. But in the mirror, he remained. He didn't blink, didn't shift, just stood there. So close I swore I should feel his breath fogging the air between us. "Keep trying the door," I told Jake, though my voice sounded paper-thin, fragile enough to tear. He jammed the crowbar deeper, metal squealing like something in pain. His shoulders heaved with every shove, but I couldn't look away from the glass. Because it wasn't just one pane anymore. One by one, the other mirrors began to take him in. First, the cracked oval in the corner, then the narrow strip with rust running down its frame. Each reflection pulled him closer, behind us, beside us, too near to breathe. Sometimes standing at the door, sometimes tilting his head toward Jake, like he was whispering in my brother's ear. My twin flinched once, quick, like he had heard something. My stomach turned cold. The air reeked of copper, sharp on the tongue. My ears rang high and shrill, as though the whole room was charging with static. "Almost. Got it," Jake grunted. Wood shrieked under the crowbar's teeth. Then it gave. A flood of cold air surged in, sharp as night, watered down my throat. We didn't wait, we bolted. Our sneakers slapped tile, beams bouncing wild across graffiti and rot. The halls blurred into each other, corner after corner, lungs burning, legs pumping until I thought we'd collapse. We didn't stop until the night swallowed us, the hospital shrinking into a block of shadow behind us. We leaned against the rusted fence, lungs dragging in ragged sync the way they always had since we were kids. For the first time since the door slammed behind us, I dared to look at him. Jake's face was slick with sweat in the beam of my flashlight, drawn, hollow, his wide eyes locked to mine. Twin to twin, they said everything neither of us dared put into words. And then, stupidly, I looked past him. The storefront across the street was dead dark, but the glass still caught us. Two figures, shoulder to shoulder. Me, Jake, our breath fogging the surface. Except, the glass didn't stop there. Behind us, blurred, patient, unblinking, stood a third reflection, closer than it should have been. Right now, if you looked up, perhaps, into the window near you, or the mirror at your side, you'd swear there was something waiting too.
Look, I know how this sounds. I wouldn't believe it either if someone else posted it, but I need to write it down somewhere before it eats me alive. Last winter, me and two friends broke into St. Alden's. You probably know it if you're local. That old brick church near the highway, boarded up windows, the one that smells like mildew even from the outside. It's been abandoned for years. We were drunk enough to think sneaking in would be funny. Inside it was colder than outside. Our breath fogged in the air, echoing off the stone walls. Every step kicked up dust that floated like ash. My buddy Tyler kept making jokes about finding a demon in the loft, while Jess dared me to sit in the confessional booth. "Tell Father what a sinner you are," she laughed, shoving me toward the dark box in the corner. I don't know why I went along. Maybe because the place unsettled me, and I didn't want to look like a coward. The booth smelled of old varnish and incense gone sour. I slid onto the narrow seat, knees pressed against the wood. The screen in front of me was just a rectangle of lattice, too dark to see through. My friends were snickering outside, whispering like kids at a sleepover. I was about to make some dumb joke about stealing candy bars, when the other side creaked. Someone sat down. The weight shifted the booth enough for me to feel it. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," I started, half mocking. The voice that answered made my mouth go dry.
"You've been here before."
I froze. It wasn't Tyler. It wasn't Jess. The voice was low, old, with a rasp like it had been swallowing dust for years. No, this is my first time." I tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Church really isn't my thing." The screen scraped faintly, like a fingernail dragging across it.
"You always lie at first,"
the voice said.
"but I know your name."
I swear to God, I didn't give it. Not once, but it said it anyway. My full name. Clear, calm, like it had been waiting. I shoved at the booth door. The handle didn't budge. My friend's laughter was gone. When I called out, my voice echoed back hollow. The booth was sealed, and the voice leaned closer.
"Why did you come back?"
I pressed my shoulder against the booth door until the wood creaked. Nothing. The handle wouldn't give, not even a millimeter. "Okay," I muttered, trying to sound calm, trying to sound like I wasn't 2 seconds away from kicking a hole through the wall. "Funny prank. You rigged the door, right? Good one. Let me out." The voice didn't laugh.
"Do you even remember
It asked softly.
the first time you lied to her?"
My stomach dropped. "What?"
"The bus stop. 5th grade. She asked if you'd wait with her after class. You told her yes."
I didn't breathe. The voice chuckled once, dry as dust.
"But you didn't wait, did you? You went home instead. She walked alone. She never made it home."
I slammed both fists against the screen. The lattice rattled but didn't break. "That's not true. I don't even know what you're talking about." The silence that followed was worse than words. Then, calm as ever, it whispered.
"You think I need you to remember? I only need you to admit it."
My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream at it, but the sound caught in my throat. My brain scrabbled for explanations. Maybe Tyler read my diary once. Maybe Jess hacked my social media. Maybe they were outside feeding me lines to freak me out. Except this wasn't public. No one knew this. Not even me. Not in detail. The way it described the bus stop, the class, the promise, it wasn't memory, it was thought. Like someone had pulled the vague feelings I'd buried and sharpened them into knives. "You don't get to do this," I whispered. "You don't know me."
"I know what you keep."
The booth shifted as if something pressed closer to the screen. The smell of incense grew stronger, burning my nose.
"Say it. Confess. Then you may go."
I shook my head, clutching my knees to keep from shaking. "You first," I snapped, though my voice cracked. The screen scraped again. The air on my side grew warmer, pressing heavy on my chest. And then it said something that turned my blood cold.
"Confession doesn't belong to priests. It belongs to walls. This wood has held every whisper, every sin, every secret. And it remembers you. Better than you remember yourself."
A splinter jabbed my palm where I gripped the bench. The booth was listening. And I wasn't alone in it. I don't know if you've ever been trapped somewhere so small that even your own breathing feels like it's taking up too much space. That's what the booth was like. Every inhale rattled the wood. Every exhale came back at me in hot gusts. The voice stayed quiet long enough that my pulse filled the silence. Then it said, almost gently,
"Start with the smallest one. The lies you practiced until they felt real."
My throat tightened. I shook my head, though no one could see me. "I don't have anything."
"Then why are you here?"
The question cracked me open in some way I can't explain. My mouth moved before my brain could stop it. I told my mom I was working late the night she called me. She just wanted help moving boxes. I didn't go. The screen buzzed faintly, like a phone line catching static.
Go on.
Heat crawled up my neck. I lied to my boss, said I was sick so I could stay home and play games. The booth groaned. Wood swelled and popped, like it was soaking in what I said. I pressed both hands over my mouth, shaking my head. I wasn't going to keep going. These weren't even sins, they were scraps, white lies. But the booth pressed closer around me. The air got thick, hot, heavy. I couldn't breathe until I spoke again. I cheated on a test in college. I never told anyone. The wood creaked. The lattice rattled. The air cleared just enough for me to suck in a breath. And I realized that's what it wanted. Not the truth, not the details. Just the act of speaking it, like feeding coal into a furnace. So I kept going, words spilled before I could think. I stole from a friend's wallet once, just $20. I told him it must have fallen out. I lied about being sober that night I drove home. I didn't stop when I saw the accident on Route 6. I could have called someone, I didn't. The booth pulsed with each one, like a heartbeat pressed into the wood. Sweat ran down my neck, stinging my eyes. My chest felt hollow, scraped raw, but lighter, like something inside me was being torn out. I gasped, clutching my knees. Enough. That's enough. The voice stayed calm.
No. You're only warming up.
I shook my head violently. I told you everything. The lattice scraped. The wood groaned louder, sharp cracks running along the walls. Dust fell from above, clinging to my damp skin. The voice leaned so close I could feel the air shift.
Then confess what you never meant to.
I whispered back, trembling. I don't know what you mean. The booth fell silent. The air went still. For a second I thought I'd broken it, that maybe it had fed enough. Then the voice whispered, low and certain, words I'd never spoken, but had thought 1,000 times when no one was listening.
You wished she'd never called you that night. You wished she'd stayed quiet forever?
My vision blurred. My whole body went cold. Because I knew exactly which night it meant. And I'd never told anyone. I wanted to scream that it was lying, that I never wished my mom would stop calling. But the words stuck in my throat because the truth was worse. There had been a second, a flicker of irritation, the night she called. I'd been tired, drunk, halfway through a movie, and when her name lit up my phone, I almost didn't answer. That flicker was enough. I didn't mean it, I croaked. It was just a thought. The voice hummed low, satisfied.
A thought is the truest confession. The mouth lies. The mind doesn't.
The air turned close again, pressing me down into the bench. My nails dug half moons into the wood. It whispered another one.
You hated the friend who left you behind. You wanted them to fail. You imagined it.
My chest clenched. I remembered graduation vividly, everyone cheering, except me. I'd smiled, hugged him, said congratulations, while secretly hoping he'd choke on all that attention.
You wanted the accident.
It pressed on.
You wanted to see what it looked like. The blood. The break.
I shook my head, rocking, but the booth wasn't waiting anymore. It was pulling things out of me. The walls creaked louder, splinters pushing up under my palms. I stared at the lattice, a faint shape pressed against it, not a face, not a body, but something darker, a shadow dense enough to bend the light. I started babbling just to get it out of me. I skipped work when my brother needed me to drive him. I lied, said I was sick, He walked instead, he got jumped. That's on me. And I wanted him to hurt, I whispered. Just for once, I wanted him to feel small. I didn't stop it. I let it happen. The screen quivered. A breath slid through it, hot against my face.
Yes,
The voice said softly.
you are beginning to remember.
I pressed my forehead to the wall. This isn't remembering. This is torture. The ring drilled straight into my skull, so sharp I thought my ears would bleed. I clamped my palms against my head, but the sound was inside the wood, inside my bones. It was her ringtone. Exactly. The one I'd set years ago. 3 long tones, a pause, 3 more. No, I whispered, rocking on the bench. No, you can't. The lattice vibrated. My hand lifted on its own, pressing to the screen. The ringing cut. And then I heard her.
Hey, sweetheart. Sorry it's late. I needed help.
My throat locked. It was her voice, not a memory, not a recording. I could hear the faint hum of traffic. The quiver she always tried to hide when she was nervous. Mom, don't say it, please. But the booth didn't care what I wanted.
The boxes in the garage, they're too heavy. Could you come over just for a little while?
The words tangled in my chest. I remembered the movie paused on my laptop, the half-empty glass sweating on the table, the weight of my own laziness like a chain. I whispered, don't go outside, please. Stay inside, Mom. Silence stretched. For a second, I thought maybe she heard me. Then came the scrape of shoes on pavement.
Sweetheart,
Her voice was small.
I thought I heard something.
The line filled with static, sharp and chaotic, like wind across a microphone. My pulse hammered. I pressed both hands against the screen, screaming, get back inside, please Mom, go inside. But her voice wavered, muffled, turning away. And then it happened again. The sound I'd buried so deep I thought I'd imagined it. A sharp gasp, cut short. A dull thud. The phone clattering across cement. Stop, I sobbed. Please stop, I can't. The booth hummed. The walls swelled like lungs filling.
You already lived it.
The voice finally returned. Calm, cruel.
All I've done is make you listen.
Side of the screen rang again. And this time, it was waiting for me to answer. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hand hovered above the lattice, trembling. If I touched it again, I knew I wouldn't come back. The booth groaned, wood stretching, splintering like something inside was clawing to get out. The air pressed tight in my lungs. The phone kept ringing, sharp, endless, each tone jagged enough to make my teeth ache. I slammed my shoulder against the door, once, twice, a third time, and I felt something gave. The door creaked open half an inch, then an inch more. The booth fought me like it wanted me to stay. But adrenaline shoved me through. I stumbled into the nave, gasping, falling against cracked tile. The church was silent. Dust drifted in faint beams through broken windows. The pews I thought I'd seen earlier were gone, just bare stone and echoes. Behind me the booth sat wide open, empty. The ringing had stopped. I staggered outside. Jess and Tyler were nowhere in sight. Gone. The parking lot was empty. My phone was dead in my pocket, the battery icon flashing like a taunt. I ran home. I don't remember the streets. Just the sound of my sneakers slapping pavement. The way every shadow looked like it wanted to follow me. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the booth waiting. I haven't been back to St. Albans. I won't even drive down that stretch of highway. But here's the thing. Confession doesn't leave you. I'll be lying in bed, lights off, house quiet, my phone on the nightstand. And sometimes, just sometimes, the silence breaks with the faintest sound. A single, sharp ring. Like someone dialing in from the other side.
I wasn't chasing ghosts, just views. Abandoned towns, forgotten spaces, clickbait thumbnails. That's what kept the channel alive. 3 friends walk into a ghost town sells better than documentary vlog, right? Glass Hollow was supposed to be our finale, a perfect lost mining town, sealed off since the rock slide of '83. Locals said it was cursed, said the dolls in the windows were still watching. I laughed when the old man told me that. Don't move them, he said. They remember where they sit. It sounded like folklore, until the forest went silent at the fence line. No birds, no wind, just a stillness that felt deliberate. The town sat beneath a ridge, half swallowed by fog, houses perfectly intact, glass unbroken, curtains still drawn. It didn't feel dead, it felt paused. Mara whistled low. Are you sure nobody lives here? Not since the slide, Jules said, adjusting his mic. He was the skeptic of the group, the guy who never let the tension breathe. We split up to film B-roll. Every window I passed had a doll facing outward, hand-stitched, porcelain faces, glass eyes with painted lashes. Each one staring at the street like they were waiting for a parade that never came. When I zoomed in, one of them looked familiar. Same freckles, same crooked part in the hair, same shirt pattern as mine. Inside the diner, the air smelled faintly of sugar and smoke. Plates still sat on tables, coffee cups half full of dust. I filmed everything. Counter, jukebox, napkin holder. Then I noticed him. A doll sitting at the counter stool, porcelain hands folded neatly. Someone had pinned a name tag on his shirt. Brandon. I called the others, laughing it off. Mara frowned. That's weirdly specific. Jules shrugged. Coincidence? Common name. Still, when I reviewed the footage later, I realized something. The doll wasn't there in the earlier shot, the one I took outside. He'd appeared between frames, perfectly still, perfectly placed. We set camp inside the general store. It felt less exposed, even if the air was thick with dust. Shelves lined with jars, paraffin, candle wax, bits of fabric sealed in glass. Creepy staging, Mara said. Feels like a museum, or a ritual, Jules muttered. I powered the lantern and started transferring footage. In one clip, there was a faint sound, humming, low, tuneless, like someone practicing before a song begins. I boosted the gain. The hum wasn't static. It was a woman's voice. Outside, something creaked, a single hinge moving in the wind that wasn't there. By midnight, the fog had thickened into something heavy. We were all jumpy, every sound amplified by the quiet. Jules suggested sleeping shifts. I volunteered first watch, pretending not to be afraid. Half an hour later, I heard footsteps. Soft, measured, pacing along the porch. I killed the lantern. Through the window, silhouettes lined the street, dolls in perfect rows, faces catching the moonlight. One of them had my jacket on. Jules, I whispered. No answer. The radio crackled, hissed, then whispered back. Brandon. Mara woke when I tripped over a crate. We both looked outside. The dolls hadn't moved, but they were closer now, lining both sides of the street like an audience. Where's Jules? She whispered. I tried his calm. Static, then a sharp click, like glass tapping glass. We grabbed our packs and bolted toward the church at the hilltop. Its steeple was cracked, bell missing, but candles flickered in the windows. Someone, or something, had lit them. The door was sealed with thick wax, pressed with dozens of handprints. When I touched it, the surface pulsed, faint and warm, like skin. We circled the building. The candles inside swayed, though there was no wind. In the fog, I counted 20 dolls lined along the fence. When I blinked, there were 21. Mara's breathing went ragged. We're being herded. No, I said, but my voice cracked, because that's exactly what it felt like. Quiet coordination. Behind us came a soft sound, the pop of ceramic necks turning. It wasn't random. It was synchronized. Every head pivoted toward the same point. The diner below. And then I heard a faint voice, feminine and flat.
Smile for the camera, Brandon.
We sprinted downhill. The fog followed like smoke. The general store was empty, our gear scattered. Jules's flashlight lay on the counter, still on, lens cracked. In the reflection of the window, I saw us standing there. Me, Mara, and a third figure just behind us. We turned. Nothing. Just the open doorway and a wall of fog beyond. Mara clutched my sleeve. We need to leave. Now. I checked the map. The GPS looped, resetting coordinates to the same spot. The arrow spun in circles. And outside, something began knocking on the glass. Polite, rhythmic, patient. The knocking moved window to window, slow and deliberate. We backed away until we hit the counter. I turned off the lantern. The dark swallowed us whole. Only the doll faces shone faintly in the gloom. Then one voice whispered, not from outside, but from behind the shelves. "Don't leave yet." I swung the light. Nothing. Mara's hand was trembling in mine. "Brandon," she said, "look at your arm." Wax. A faint streak of it trailed from my wrist to the floor, like I was melting from the inside out. We ran again, or tried to. The road twisted in ways it hadn't before. Buildings leaned closer, narrowing the street. Every doorway cracked open as we passed, just enough to let the eyes watch. The fog thickened until the world was just outlines and shadows. When we reached the diner, the doll at the counter was waiting, same name tag, same face. Only now his smile was wider. I felt something tugging under my skin, like strings tightening. I turned the camera toward the window. For a split second, my reflection wasn't human, just porcelain. Cracked, glossy, hollow, and from somewhere deep in the fog, the humming began. Morning didn't arrive. It just thinned the dark. Fog clung to the street like wet fabric. I'd slept in fragments, sitting up with the camera in my lap, listening for footsteps that never came and hearing them anyway. Mara poured stale water into tin cups. "We find Jules," she said. "Then we leave." I agreed, because that's what you say when the map is useless, and the air tastes like candle smoke. The dolls in the windows hadn't shifted, but their reflections were wrong. Eyes bright where the glass was dull, as if the shine came from inside the head. We started with the workshop. If the town had a heart, it lived there. The sign over the door was hand-painted. Glass hollow crush. Someone had scratched a second word beneath. Keep. Inside, the dust ran in neat lines, like it had been combed. Racks of porcelain heads hung from twine. each painted to a different almost face. Some had iris rings but no pupils yet. Blue circles staring through us. On the work table, a child-sized torso waited, hands missing. Next to it, a pair of gloves stained pale as bone. I touched one fingertip. It was warm. Fresh from the kiln warm. Recent. Mara found a ledger. Leather cover, brittle pages, careful script that never lost its patience. Names, dates, and tiny checklist boxes. Old entries matched the 1983 newspapers I remembered. The vanished families. But the newer names didn't fit. There was Lynn dated 2019, Hargreave dated 2021, and at the very bottom, the same perfect hand had written Jules dated today. Mara slammed the book shut and flinched like it had bitten her. "Screw this place," she said. But she didn't drop the ledger. Some part of her needed to understand what we were inside. So did I. We followed a line of drying racks toward a back room. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in a step. My breath fogged. Mara's didn't. The shelves here were filled with wax molds, negative faces, cheek hollows, the soft space where a mouth should be. A dozen labels dangled on twine. Mother, boy, guest, usher, and one tied to a 2-part mold that looked exactly like my jawline. Brandon. I put my thumb into the empty mouth to prove it wouldn't fit. It fit. The radio cracked alive, 1 syllable only. Don. It sounded like Jules. Or me. We searched the church next. The wax-sealed doors had softened in the night. Indentations looked deeper, like fresh palms had pressed from the inside. "Hello?" Mara called, and the nave gave us our voices back on a delay, pitched slightly higher, as if someone upstairs were practicing us. "Hello," the balcony answered, an octave off. We mounted the steps slowly. Halfway up, the boards complained under a weight that wasn't ours. The balcony rail was draped with dresses, lace, muslin, flannel, all child-sized, all clean. "Brandon," came from the choir loft, in my voice. We reached the loft, no Jules. Only a phonograph with a wax cylinder spinning soundlessly. Its horn aimed at the pews below. The needle lifted, fell, giving sermons to an empty congregation. Mara gestured at the horn. "It's recording us," she whispered. "Onto what?" I said. "There's no wax left." The horn trembled, then let out a whisper. "There is." We froze. The whisper had our cadence, the same little crack I get when I run out of sleep. I checked the camera. The red light pulsed even though it was off. Something else was recording. We reviewed the overnight footage right there on the balcony, kneeling beside the phonograph like confession. The timeline showed a 6-minute block we hadn't filmed. In it, our sleeping bodies lay on the general store floor, while a third figure stood over us, head tilted too far to be bone. Frame by frame, the figure glided to the window. Its reflection was a doll, and the doll's reflection was me. The audio track was worse. Under our breaths, a voice counted. Not numbers, but steps. "Sit. Sit. Sit." Until the porch boards outside clicked in rhythm. Mara shut the laptop. "We leave now." We followed the road out, past the diner and barber, past the schoolhouse, with its bell rope drawn, taut like a held breath. The GPS arrow spun helpless circles. The map rotated without moving. The ridge we'd climbed yesterday was gone, replaced by a shallow bowl of fog. The dolls were not in the windows anymore. They were on the porches. not closer, just placed with the certainty of things that had been decided for us. A door halfway down the block stood ajar. Jules's boot print gleamed on the threshold, wet as if poured. Inside, the general store again, but it wasn't. The shelves were fuller, the jars were clearer, and someone had written on the counter in needle-straight letters, "You look better still." Mara's breath hitched. She ran a sleeve over the glass of the front window. Our reflections looked back, wavering in the fog. Only the reflections weren't aligned. Mine lagged a fraction of a second behind me, then smiled when I didn't. "Brandon," Mara said, eyes on my arm. A fine seam of pale wax traced my wrist, vanishing beneath my sleeve like a vein learning the route. Something upstairs rehearsed our laughter and almost got it right. We backed toward the door, slow as animals. The street had filled while we weren't looking, not with people, with chairs. Rockers, kitchen chairs, pew seats, dragged from everywhere and arranged in tidy rows facing the church. Mara squeezed my hand. "They're setting an audience." "For what?" I asked. But I already knew. The church bell rope twitched once, twice, then held. From the balcony, our voices began again, reading from a script neither of us remembered writing. "Don't move them. They remember where they sit." Something answered from the workshop, the click of a kill door unlatching. And above our heads, in the loft we just left, footsteps crossed the boards in our rhythm, marching their way to us. We didn't talk after that. We just walked. The fog pressed down like a ceiling, and the road led wherever it wanted. Every step sounded softer, like the ground was cushioning us. Taking notes. When we reached the church again, the wax on the doors had melted away. The smell was thicker now, burnt sugar and rain-soaked wood. Candles flickered somewhere deep inside. Mara hesitated. If Jules went in, there might be nothing left to save. I nodded. We both knew we weren't rescuing anyone. We were finishing what we'd already started. The chapel's pews were empty. The dolls that had once filled them now lined the walls, heads bowed, hands joined like they were praying for us. The pulpit was gone. In its place stood a stairwell spiraling into the earth. Wax ran down the steps like veins. The air vibrated faintly, humming without a source. The first step sank slightly under my boot, soft, like flesh warming to touch. Every few feet, the glow pulsed brighter, steady as breathing. We didn't speak again until the stairs ended. The basement was a workshop, if you could still call it that. Rows of molds filled the room, each one shaped like a face, some unfinished, some perfect. The labels dangled in the glow: mother, stranger, traveler, friend. The last 3 molds sat apart on a table. Mara, 2025. Jules, 2025. And the last one, clean and still wet, was Brandon, 2025. I reached for it, hoping it would feel cold. It didn't. It felt like the inside of a mouth, warm and pulsing with quiet life. Mara's breath hitched. "We're already in them," she said. The wax recorder sat in the center of the table, its cylinder slowly turning, catching our words. The voice that came from it wasn't mine, but it knew how to be. "Glass preserves what light forgets," it whispered, and the walls seemed to agree. "Glass preserves." The phrase repeated softly, winding into the rhythm of our breathing. The candles leaned toward the recorder, like listeners. The longer it spoke, the less room there was between our voices. "Light forgets." Mara dropped to her knees. "It's recording our faces." And she was right. The wax molds around us were filling, one slow blink at a time. The ground shuddered. The dolls upstairs began to sing again, faint, uneven, more human than before.
Glass preserves.
Mara grabbed my arm. The seam of wax that had been faint along my wrist was now running up to my shoulder, a thin white vine threading under the skin.
Glass.
She tore at it, but it didn't peel. It sank deeper instead, blending into me.
Glass preserves.
The wax felt cold at first, then comforting, like the warmth you feel when you stop struggling underwater.
Glass preserves.
Mara's voice cracked.
Forgets.
"Don't let it finish," I told her, quietly. "It already has."
Glass.
We tried for the stairs, but they had closed. Wax covered the steps in smooth, perfect sheets, still cooling.
Glass preserves.
The only way out was the way forward, a low passage at the back, pulsing with light.
Glass
The
preserves.
doll's song grew louder, and I realized it wasn't coming from them at all. It was the molds.
Glass preserves.
Each one exhaled softly as wax settled into shape, sighing like lungs filling for the first time. When the light dimmed, I saw my own mold crack open.
Glass preserves.
Inside, something stared back, my own face, painted and waiting to replace me. Mara turned to run. Her foot caught the mold table, sending them crashing to the floor. The sound was too soft for porcelain. It was more like ribs breaking. The wax figure that looked like me shifted its head toward her. The sound it made wasn't speech, but memory. Our laughter from the first day of filming, twisted into something circular and empty. Mara screamed my name, but her voice came from two mouths. One flesh, one echo. The second one didn't stop when she did. The recorder clicked once and whispered,
Sit.
The light dimmed, then pulsed again, syncing with my heartbeat. I couldn't tell if the room was spinning or breathing. Every step forward pulled at invisible strings, guiding me toward the open church door above. Outside, dawn had begun. The fog thinned, revealing the street again. Only now it was lined with chairs, every seat filled. The dolls were still, perfect, waiting. Mara was gone. I didn't remember watching her leave, but I could still hear her voice humming under the chorus, steady and mechanical. Each doll blinked once in unison when I stepped into the light. The town looked beautiful in the morning. Glass storefronts glowed pink with sunrise, fog turning to gold. I raised the camera, though I wasn't sure why. The red record light blinked before I pressed it. In the window across from me, my reflection looked back. Porcelain. Smooth. Lips parted in a faint smile. Its eyes tracked mine with calm precision. I thought about running, but my legs wouldn't move. Wax bound them at the ankles, gentle as rope. Glass preserves what light forgets, I whispered. And the reflection's mouth finished the sentence for me. Now, when the wind moves through the hollow, it hums a little. The dolls sway on their chairs, glass eyes glittering. Some days I think I'm still breathing. Some days I think I'm only remembering what that felt like. The camera plays itself sometimes, replaying the town as it was. Full, alive, and waiting. They said Glass Hollow was buried by the landslide. Maybe it was. Maybe the mountain just closed around it to keep the song from getting out. Because the dolls here aren't watching. They're remembering. And I think, finally, I'm helping them do it.